In today's video, we have several more NHL signings, including many NHL prospects that have signed new contracts to discuss. Plus, I want to take a look at some offseason rumors concerning some top guys like Taylor Hall and Tyson Barrie. We'll jump into the latest news coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have several signings to discuss here. We have a few current players that have signed new deals and several prospect signings, so let's dive right in here. First up, the news just broke that the Boston Bruins have re-signed backup goalie Jaro Halak to a one-year deal valued at $2.25 million. This is a great signing by Boston. Halak was going to be one of the better backup goalies on the free agent market if he would have made it there whenever we finally have an off season, but clearly he wanted to stay in Boston. That's a bit of a pay cut, almost $500,000 less than what he's making right now with the Bruins, and he's played very well, put up some great stats. This past year was even better than his first year with the Bruins, so clearly that's a case of him wanting to stay with Boston, taking a little bit of a haircut to make it work, which seems to be the thing to do in Boston. They seem to have a way there getting guys to take team-friendly deals. It's kind of a unified front by a lot of the top players, and most of the rest of them seem to follow suit. So that's a great signing by Boston. I know Halak was going to be, like I said, a very interesting goalie on the market when we finally have the offseason. So unfortunately for other teams, he is no longer available, and the Bruins keep their steady goaltending tandem in place. Now, the other NHL existing player who signed a new contract was Ben Harpur, signing a deal with the Nashville Predators. Of course, Ben Harpur got started with Ottawa. He was involved in a trade to the Maple Leafs last year involving Cody Ceci and Zaitsev and all those guys. Harpur ended up playing in their American Hockey League affiliate and essentially was eventually released from his contract there. So Harpur now signs a one-year, two-way deal with the Predators, which will pay him $700K at the NHL level and $225K at the American Hockey League level. So that's a pretty good contract. There was a point when Harpur was a pretty valuable member of the Sens D-Corps, especially when they went on that 2017 Eastern Conference playoff run. He actually played a pretty regular shift and played a lot in the playoffs and was pretty good, but wasn't able to keep up the consistency within his game. He's a huge guy. He's like 6'6", 6'7", but just does not play physical enough, in my opinion, compared to what he could do. He does have the odd scrap, but we'll see how he can fit in Nashville. But considering how strong their top four are in the Predators organization, he's a decent depth signing to be a 6, 7, 8 guy within their system. He can go up and down between their two affiliates in the NHL or the American Hockey League. Now let's dive over now and take a look at some of the prospects that signed contracts that were announced here today. Kick things off here with the Calgary Flames signing goaltender Dustin Wolf, who's had a pretty solid year in the Western Hockey League this past year for the Everett Silvertips. Posted some pretty solid stats in the goalie department with a .935 save percentage and a goals against average under 2, which is incredible. He represented his country with Team USA at the World Juniors. Didn't see a ton of action, but he did get into one game at the World Juniors. The fact he was even on the team, considering how much talent is out there, says something for how well he's doing. So another interesting signing here by the Flames. Could possibly be longer term their goalie of the future. They don't have a ton of goaltending in the depth department within the Flames organization. They've drafted 2 or 3 other goalies in the last 5, 6, 7 years that just haven't quite developed and turned out to what they were hoping for here. So we'll see if Wolf can be one of those guys to break that trend. I mean, he does look pretty solid right now and is one of the better goalie prospects from around the NHL. Now, the Montreal Canadiens have announced a signing today, but it's not the one Habs fans were waiting for. They were really hoping for a signing of Alexander Romanov, of course, the top defenseman coming over from the KHL. That was not announced, but it is expected to still happen. It is expected to happen soon, but there could be a delay, as I mentioned in a prior video, in case you didn't catch that. Romanov is, I think, kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with the 1920 season, and Montreal is interested in signing him and letting him play if this season were to resume, and they're going to be involved, especially in a potential playoff run, depending on how that format goes and what's all decided. So that very well is what's holding this up, in my opinion. I think once we have a little bit more clarity on the 1920 season, we will see Romanov sign. Everybody that's involved here and has any kind of connection at all is still reiterating the fact that he's definitely signing. So Habs fan can definitely relax on that front. It's going to happen here sooner or later. However, they did announce that they signed Arsen Kisamutinov. Now, I may have very well butchered that name. It's really long and difficult to pronounce. I'll put it up here on the screen in case you haven't seen it yet. But he's certainly a very interesting looking prospect here that comes from the KHL. He was drafted by the Habs last year, 2019, in the 6th round. He's a few years older. He was certainly a later drafted prospect. Only 22 years old, so he gets a 2-year entry-level contract. Last year, he did play, like I said, in the KHL, but he also played in their lower-level league over there in Russia as well. He's got great size, 6'3", over 200 pounds. So has a pretty good NHL ready size, but I guess we'll see how he develops. I don't see him going straight to the NHL. Likely will spend some time within their minor league affiliates and see how he develops, but still another big center iceman. You can't have enough of those guys around within the organization. Hopefully he works out for Montreal. The Edmonton Oilers also announced another defensive signing today, signing prospect from Sweden, Philip Berglund, who was drafted by the Oilers back in 2016 in the 3rd round. He's been playing the last few years over in the SHL. Berglund's a right shot D, 6'3", 205 pounds. So another interesting defensive prospect here for the Oilers to officially get in their system. Now, he's not going to be making the jump to North America right away. He is going to remain over in Sweden for 1 more year, but then come over in an entry-level contract will kick in the following season. So that is all for the official signings, but there is a couple more signings that are rumored to be happening here relatively soon. However, the Sharks appear to be the front-runners to sign KHL free agent goalie Alexei Melnichuk, so we'll see if that actually takes place. But the Sharks are another team who could use some more goalies in their organization with some longer-term potential, so hopefully we'll see if that works out for them. And the New Jersey Devils appear to be landing a pretty good-looking prospect as well, 26-year-old defenseman Mikko Lehtinen, who many argue was the top defenseman in European hockey last year, has been let go by his contract with Jokerit in Finland, and he will be making a jump to the NHL next year. And NHL insiders are suggesting right now that the Devils seem to have the inside track on signing him. That would make a lot of sense considering where they're at with their whole organization. He would be able to get more playing time with a team that's lower in the standings and certainly going through a bit of a rebuild. So that would be a great add for them. He looks to be very mature and has certainly been able to improve his game over the last number of years. We'll see if that becomes official here anytime soon. Another quick unrelated note to signings or rumors, but another good news story here. Grayson Cameron, who was a member of the Humboldt Broncos when they unfortunately had that bus crash a couple years ago, has certainly battled a long way back. Of course, as we know, in that bus crash, there was many players from the Broncos. Some of them unfortunately didn't survive the crash, and many others were very badly injured. Of course, Cameron himself did survive and went through some really serious injuries, and originally, when everything first went down, was told he likely would never play hockey again. He had a broken back. He suffered a pretty bad concussion as well as a pretty serious eye injury, and he certainly defied the odds and did battle his way back. Sooner than expected, he did get back to playing hockey. He went back to his midget AAA team and then eventually did rejoin the Humboldt Broncos this past year as the team captain, and was having a certainly pretty good year considering all things. He really wanted to be back in Humboldt and get things finished up there, getting a little bit of closure. Now it's being reported he's getting ready to join a team in the NCAA. So the fact that he was told he likely would never play again, and unfortunately all the sadness and sorrow that came from that bus crash, is nice to see. A nice positive good news story. And Cameron here is certainly a great example of working hard and battling back. Goes to show that anything can be possible when you really put your mind to it. So it's great to see it. I just want to share that bit of good news here with you today. Now let's jump over to the NHL offseason rumors I wanted to take a look at. First of all, there's a lot of talk about Tyson Barrie and where might he end up once the offseason gets underway and we finally get to have free agency. It's pretty much all but assured he will not return to the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's going to prove very difficult for them to afford him. Unfortunately for Barrie, this past year really didn't go as well as planned, so his stock and his value certainly has diminished a little bit, but I do think there's enough teams out there that are really looking for puck-moving, mobile, offensive-looking D that he's still likely going to get a pretty decent contract out of this situation. NHL insiders are reporting that they feel he likely would be very interested in returning home. In case you're not aware, he's from BC, so for home would be the Canucks, but I just don't see how they would be able to fit him into the equation as of right now. They're very tight up against the cap. They have some really top young players going to need some big raises here soon, like Pettersson and Hughes, and it would be almost impossible to make that happen. Now, before he was traded to Toronto, there were some pretty serious trade talks between the Avalanche and the Canucks, and he was very, very close to going to Vancouver Vancouver, but a lot has changed with the Canucks since those discussions took place. They didn't add JT Miller and said now we have the emergence of Hughes and Pettersson. We know for sure that they're bona fide superstars and what kind of contracts they're going to be looking for. So I just don't see it being possible without them shedding some big time money. And they also have other guys on their roster already, like Jacob Markstrom, who's like super important for them to re-sign, and that's going to be a tough enough as it is. So here's a list of teams that NHL insiders are suggesting very well could be good landing spots for Barrie, and that list includes the Detroit Red Wings, the New Jersey Devils, the Los Angeles Kings, as well as the Chicago Blackhawks, and one of them also included is the Winnipeg Jets. And for me, Winnipeg makes the most sense. Now for Tyson Barrie, I think he could be a good fit in pretty much all of those teams and could certainly get himself a pretty decent contract for the most part. Many of those teams, not all, but many have some pretty good salary cap flexibility. Maybe not as much in Chicago, but Los Angeles could probably figure out a way to make it work. Detroit, New Jersey certainly could make it work, but Winnipeg, with Dustin Byfuglien coming off the books officially now, also have more flexibility and desperately need some experience and a good solid puck moving defenseman like Barrie. He would be the perfect ideal guy for what they're missing now. Of course, he's not Dustin Byfuglien. He's not going to bring that physical style of the game. He's a whole different kind of defenseman back there. The fact of the matter is they could certainly be one of the top teams that are closer to contending than many of these other teams. And given where Barrie is in his career, he may not want to go through a rebuild at this point. He's already been through a lot of that in Colorado before he was traded. Obviously, the last little while in Colorado was pretty good, but he certainly went through some trying times with the Avalanche organization when they were rebuilding through many of those young players that are still top stars there today. So going to a team like Winnipeg would help them get back being much closer to the team they were before last season, before they had all the losses through free agency because of the tight cap situation. So with that flexibility being given, I think Tyson Barrie to Winnipeg personally makes a lot of sense. Of course, I don't know that he would want to go there, and I can't say with any certainty that they definitely would want to sign him, but if you look at the teams that make sense for him, to me, Winnipeg is a good spot, but certainly LA, Detroit, New Jersey, or other possibilities as well. Let me know down in the comments, what do you think? Which of these teams do you think would make the most sense to land Tyson Barrie this offseason? What kind of contract do you see him getting after having a bit of a down year with the Leafs? I also want to take a look at Taylor Hall and his possibility of being linked to the Colorado Avalanche. Now, of course, if you look at the offseason rumors around Taylor Hall, where he might go, I'm personally not sold on the fact that he's staying in Arizona. I think it would be very, very difficult cap-wise, which we've discussed here before, and I don't think he's sold on the idea given how everything went after he arrived in town after being traded there partway through this past NHL season. Taylor Hall is going to be one of the top names in the free agent market, and there's going to be lots of teams very much interested, and there's been many NHL reporters, and I know I've kind of felt the sentiment as well that the Avs would be a great fit for Taylor Hall. Can you imagine adding him to their top six? But a recent article in the Denver Post with Mike Chambers, who did a recent mailbag interview, took that kind of a question and was looking at the fact maybe if they would add a guy like Hall. And Alex Petrangelo's name is also brought up in this mailbag question. He basically shut it down, is that he doesn't feel like the Avalanche have any interest in really adding a big gun like that through free agency, that they're going to continue to build through their prospects and through their own internal organization. They do have a lot of interesting prospects already in the system. They have some already more on the way. They really don't need to go the route of trade or free agency to really add a big gun, but some felt that they might want to take that one extra step here to get a big name like him in the mix. But of course, like I said before as well, even though they have lots of cap space today, Captain Gabriel Landeskog's not that far from renewing his contract. He's going to be looking for a raise. Cale Makar is going to be looking for a significant contract as well. So it makes a lot of sense with the other guys they already have en route as well. They still have guys like Alex Newhook and Connor Timmins, etc., coming up through the ranks. So they have more top players who could possibly be joining their team without going that route. So according to Chambers, you can rule out the possibility of the Avalanche being big game hunters in free agency. So if that's the case, where does Taylor Hall end up going? I know there's been a lot of talk about returning to Edmonton, but I really don't see that being a possibility either. I know the Calgary Flames are another intriguing possibility that we've discussed before, but could they make it work without shedding some salary too? I mean, obviously Taylor Hall would be a tremendous addition there, but how would all that play out with the existing money they already have tied up in a lot of their top players? there already. So if this information from Mike Chambers is true and the Avs have no interest, where do you see Taylor Hall being the most likely team to land with when the offseason comes and free agency finally gets underway? That is all for today. Let me know your thoughts on everything we discussed down in the comments section, and we can continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And again, thank you very much to all of our channel membership holders. I certainly appreciate your support very much. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.